Welcome to Kizuna, a Teijin Innovation Vodcast. Like the Japanese word Kizuna, enduring bonds between people, we believe in the power of bringing people together when it comes to developing the newest technologies for the future. My name is Franziska. I'm an innovation advisor and your host of this vodcast. And in this episode, we talk about the future of work. With me again, I have Jay Latta, fusionist, emerging technology strategist. Jay, welcome on board again. How are you today?
Hello. I'm fine. It started to snow, so we'll see how the day will develop.
Snow and rain. I saw this already. And we have two guests this time, which is great. And it's actually the first time where we have such a big round. Warm welcome to Karola Japke, President of Teijin Holdings Europe. And
hello, good morning.
Good morning. And Bernadette Schreyer, Agile Coach at BMW. Yes, it's very good to have you both here. Maybe, Karola, we can start with you. Could you please introduce yourself a little bit and maybe also tell us what inspires you every day in such a big position, being president of Teijin Holdings Europe?
Yeah, thank you. As already said, I'm Karola and I'm the president of Teijin Holdings EU. What inspires me every morning is actually my dog and my daughter. So it has nothing to do with work because they are the perfect balance to my stressful job. And they have always very new ideas that I can even incorporate in what I do.
Bernadette, I know that you don't want to be called Bernadette. So for the audience, you can also call me Franzi. Bernie, what inspires you every day when it comes to your job?
Yeah, I must say that's also something that is not particularly part of my job as an agile coach. I must say I'm inspired by people's stories, not only in my job, but also, in general in my life. So I'm really curious about to hear them and to get to know them.
Jay, this question is also for you. What inspires you?
Well, seems I'm the only one in the round that is inspired by his job. Since I'm my own master, since I can really live what I live for, it's innovation, it's creativity. I enjoy every day, really, when getting up, to deep dive into the latest stuff, to explore, to read a lot, to experiment, even sometimes to get my hands dirty. But it's really about this being the master of your own time. So I assume the two ladies beside of you, of course, professionals in this video podcast are as well inspired by managing their own time, being responsible, and getting this kind of impulses where they can recharge and do something for them own. Just an assumption.
Yeah, being responsible. Bernie, your career started in a very interesting and very different way than usual. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about it. And responsible, I just said, because one of the values you mentioned in your film, which we talk about in a second, was also responsibility. But yeah, how did it start and why are you an agile coach now?
Yeah, so it started in a completely different world. I remember I had really trouble to decide what to study after school. So I'm really passionate about technology, innovation, engineering. I'm a musician, I'm a soundtrack composer, and I'm really into, as I said, people's stories, psychology, how the brain works, and everything like that. And so, I found a compromise to study sound engineering because there I had the technology and the music. And then I started to work as an acoustics engineer, doing basically sound design for V8 cylinder engines for BMW. Basically, a really cool job, and I really had the coolest cars, but at the same time, I was super unhappy. I was super unhappy because I kind of saw that that by heart, I'm not an engineer. I was always more interested in how people work together, the collaboration between people. And of course, I was fascinated to be in a large organization like that because I really wanted to learn how things work and how people talk to each other in communities and center of competences and so on and so on. Yeah, and long story short, there was like a certain day in my career I said I would like to change. I have to change something. And this is where I took a sabbatical. I left BMW for 1.5 years and I came back and changed my way, yeah, to IT. So from engineering, I went to IT and got the role or the position as an agile coach, where I am, responsible to create a good environment for people to grow. And that's something I absolutely love doing. And by the way, I get to know people's stories. So that's also very nice in that position too.
And while you were on board on a sailing boat, that's how you say it. You were inspired by the surrounding, I think by the team spirit, and then you just started to, take out your camera and you shot a movie on the sailing boats.
Yeah, so during my sabbatical, I was sailing and I crossed the Atlantic from Europe to the Caribbean and back. And this was just this one moment I had the idea, hey, I would like to make a movie, a little video about how essential it is to have values in a team, to overcome challenges and to show the comparison between, okay, we have challenges as a team in a task force because we have that deadline at work. It's very similar to, okay, I'm in a crew. I have 3 people. I have 2,000 nautical miles in front of me and a storm coming up. So I just said I would like to keep that moment and to record it and to share it with other people, to tell my story. And yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah. Karola, I mean, that's like probably very contrasting to how your career started. But what are your thoughts on this? How important are values, when it comes to building company cultures?
Very important, because that is the first thing that people actually see from a company, because I assume that when people are looking out for a new job, they search web pages and these kind of things. And what you will find there are the values of the company. And that is something that people can either relate to or they can't. And then when they started, then of course we have to prove that the values is not just something on a nice brochure, but we live it. And it's also, your inner compass for each employee, but especially for the top management. And we have to live by it. So it's very important. And I'm very happy that in our company we have values that are very nice. And I can still, even after 23 years, relate to every day.
I mean, maybe also you, Jay, you can answer. What do you think is the challenge here when it comes to values? Because we can say this is the company, these are the values, A to B, but like how to C. But how can we embody these values? How can we make sure as an organization that everyone understands what we're standing for and feels like part of it?
Tricky question. The thing is,
People here.
the bigger a company is, the more international a company is. I mean, culture within a company does not mean these different national behaviors. Like, what does it mean when someone is from India, someone from China, if it's Japan, if it's South Africa, and so on? No, a corporate culture is the connection layer to have this one entity that is across the planet and that the people share the same values. This gives you some kind of individual DNA. There is no one size fits all. So if it's Teijin, if it's BMW, if it's Mercedes, if it's Siemens, Bosch, whomever, all of these need an own identity. With this identity, you can motivate the people to feel like part of something. I do not really like when people frame it like, oh, we are part of a family. No, we are not. We are spending a lot of time every day with these people. There are some different individuals. We have not just extroverts and introverts. Meanwhile, we know that we have as well ambiverts and omniverts. So here, all of these different personalities need to be somehow get aligned. They need to identify themselves from different perspectives. It's very hard because the management mostly is on a different level than the working level. The working level sometimes experiences it as some kind of disconnection. So especially, for example, during the pandemic, when I had my calls with clients, big companies, it was mostly in, let's say, 75% of the cases, they have not been complaining about staying at home, being somewhere else, working remotely. Majority of the people enjoy it, especially the introverts. For them, it's not being locked away. For them, it's paradise. This is what we need to understand. What the people were complaining about, or what they've been missing, was the chitty chat. It was the social glue between the people. So the small chitty chat in the coffee canteen, to meet someone, to have these safe spaces. So here, if we are talking about a culture, we need to embed as well, outside of the usual stuff, we need to embed as well the social glue for the people. We need to show them that they are being appreciated. And in the best way, it's done with transparency. I know many, many companies who live, especially in Germany, who live the need to know principle. The need to know principle describes, this is the part of your job. This is the only information I will share with you. Do your job. This is what you are being paid for. I mean, come on. This is a behavior like from the NSA. When you are not sharing, the people are demanding, and it doesn't matter if it's even not a generational question. It doesn't matter if it's Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, whatever it is. People are looking more and more for a purpose. And purpose does not mean I'm getting money for my everyday's job. They want to identify themselves. So right now, shifting to Bernie, agile methods turned out to be an important step. They are not the final goal. They are an important step through small iterations, because the final idea behind agile means you have a huge repository of stuff where everyone within the company can see it. And if they think they can contribute on this, then they are free to do so. So the usual thing is you take this virtual post-it, you work on it, then you put it into the testing area until it's being approved. For this, you need to be able to be responsible for your task. Right now, majority of the corporates, it does not really work. We are pressing agile structures in the corporate structures where we have these huge dependencies, where you are mostly postponing your work because you wait until someone comes out of the vacation, or they are not responsible, or they simply have a veto right. So here, simply leaving these corporate structures via agile methods to something that is better. I've seen experiments with flat hierarchies, really flat hierarchies, unbossing the structures, where we had self-organizing teams, where the personal assistant from the board was able to see the repository in the same way like the janitor. And if they simply thought that they can somehow help here on this topic, they've been free to join the team. So here, this is the ultimate freedom for a company. And then comes something very important, because this episode is dedicated to cooperation and collaboration. Everyone can be creative. Everyone. It's just how are we motivated to use this creativity in our job? If we use the creativity to, let's say, to find a way how to end earlier my day and to disappear, or if I'm using this power for something creative to bring value, being appreciated. And collaboration, cooperation is extremely important to be a future-proof company. These close silos, don't talk with the others, do not work anymore. And companies, again, in Germany, several are proud that they have 26.35 years of average stay in the company. These times are over. We need to motivate. We are talking here about the skilled workers shortage. So attracting people to come to join me, and especially the younger generations, they do not really join for a lifelong story. They are maybe even interested into 1.5 years, 2 years, 2.5 years, because the project is so sexy. So here it's really to understand through transparency, appreciation, this connectivity glue. And then, of course, we are on quite a good way to reinvent our corporate structures again.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I and like colleagues from my university, we all say, I think we think in chapters, and not like, okay, we're joining this one company. And I mean, I work in startups, so that's even more like, fast paced. But Bernie, could you maybe tell us a little bit about the trends when it comes to the future of work? I know this is a buzzword, but what are you observing? Because Jay talked a lot now about art methods, and it was wonderful to listen to that. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, I was listening to Jay and I was thinking I had to stay at sea, at the ocean. I had the picture in mind of a big tanker, like a corporate company this size is like a tanker. And if you want to change something, you really have to prepare it and wait a long time until the tanker is able to turn right or left or even stop or go faster. I don't know. So it's always to find a balance between releasing old structures and getting in new structures. It's like frameworks like Scrum and SAFe and large scale plannings and whatever there is from the methods. Of course, I see progress on everywhere. But when it comes to like the trends, I maybe would like to say something that I observe, that the topic people and culture is getting more and more important. And that's something I'm really happy about, because for me, it is essential to work on the environment we're working in. Yeah, because of course another trend is that everything is getting faster, everything is getting more complex. We have a lot of dependencies, we have less people, we have more workload, everything is getting more stressful and more pressure. And this is why I'm convinced that it's so important to work on a culture, an environment, or values, or however you call it, that where people feel comfortable and where people can get their energy in order to have a sustainable work life.
Yeah, I always think about a garden, just like as a metaphor, like, because it's nice if sometimes teams meet each other, especially in big organization, I guess, and just like building structures or building this like fluidity where people can thrive. Karola, what do you think about the trends that you're currently observing? What are the challenges and what are also the opportunities when you think about Teijin in particular?
Yeah, actually, I can understand whatever was said before, and the challenges for Teijin is actually the undoing. So because, we are a 105-year-old company, so we have very well-defined structures and long stories what the best way of doing is. And Teijin had never difficulties to add new things on, but Teijin has difficulties to let go of things from the past. And that is one thing. The other thing is that Teijin is a very decentralized organized company. So we have different ways of doing all over the world. And our challenge is to provide a platform where people can connect to each other without big structure behind. So we don't want to organize this connecting so much. We would like to encourage people to do that, and how to organize it in a decentralized organization is a little bit challenging. Another trend, of course, is also that our people still have the wish to have job security, but at the same time, they want to have much more say and influence how to organize their work. So that is also something that is especially challenging for my previous job as a CHRO, because HR in a company like Teijin had the wish that we have very standardized and global at best practices, which is a one fits all approach, and that is no longer working, and that is a little bit of an anxiety for all of my HR colleagues at the moment.
You just said HR, and there's of course like people and culture, you know. So maybe you can tell us about what's your definition of human resources or people and culture. Where do you see what's the difference? Is there no difference? You know, because like these two like names, descriptions are in the room, I think, at the moment constantly.
Yeah, for me, people and culture is one important part of HR, because that is what we are dealing with every day. I mean, we work for people, for our people inside, but also for communities outside of our company. But at the same time, there are also other requirements to HR that are still there. So from the very operational, if you like it or not, payroll will always be some kind of responsibility of HR. But there are also requests coming from the top management in terms of analytics and predictions, which is not, let's say, 100% included in the culture and people side. So therefore, I still prefer HR rather than people and culture, because it's broader from my point of view.
Jay, maybe you can tell us about your definition. What does HR mean to you, and also in this context, people and culture?
People and culture is the way how companies should live it. We do not need to name it like this. HR for a long time within my career was a pain, until I've decided for me to start convincing the people that it was not human resources. No one wants to be a resource. It's more about, in the beginning, I started to reframe it as human capital, that we are valuable assets. Meanwhile, I even left this, returned to the term HR, but from the perspective as human relationship management. Karola said two very important things. The first one is undoing, or how I call it, learn, unlearn, and relearn. It's so important that a company stays curious. There is a 250-year-old company in UK on the stock exchange and so on, I think 9 billion pound value. And this company started as a coal mining company 250 years ago. They still exist, but not as coal mining anymore. They started to be curious about what are the people doing with the coal, beside of cooking and heating. So then they started to explore how does it work with the steel. So they went into production of steel. Then they went into railway. Meanwhile, they are through aviation in space tech. So here, reinventing yourself again to cut away what is not needed anymore is very important. And this is as well something that has an impact on your staff, with that they can see that things are moving forward, that they do not develop this anxiety of, oh gosh, I will lose my job, I need security, and so on and so on, where they really see there is progress, there is always a way. And the second thing that I wanted to pick on is the job of this human relationship management. There is a player in the pharma industry. They have decided, like what Karola mentioned with predictions, they have decided to build a proactive HR. So this means the appreciation comes from continuous assessments. Normally, you are getting an assessment if you are in some kind of management position, when you are being hired or when you are being promoted. They have decided to develop together with psychologists small apps, casual games, that when you need a short break, you simply play these things. And this is constantly assessing you because we are constantly changing. We are in this flow of our skills. And here it might be that if you have a new high score, that the HR calls you and tells you, hey, Jay, you made this and that, so your profile matches a project. Would you like to give it a chance for 3 months, for whatever? And this is really something extremely exciting when the HR approaches you and tells you, hey, you've made a new step. Are you willing to go the next step with us? So here, not being this passive thing, mostly especially in German corporates, you see the HR when you are being hired, when something happens in between, and when you are being laid off or when you leave and so on. So you don't really see these people. So it's more important to really become this relationship management, to be there for the people, actively for the people. Of course, it's hard. I know this. In a corporate, when one HR guy is responsible for 200, 300 people, it can be as well annoying. You have these completely different types. One is constantly nagging, the other one wants to become, and so on and so on. So it's a tricky thing. I guess that with the recent developments in AI, we don't have AI, but this automation, with this more approving stuff, that we will get the right tools on our hand to focus on what the humans are best in, and that even the HR can automatize workflows and really focus on these things, on this relationship with the people, from the people, for the people.
Yeah, so cool. I would love to do this. And I also think it's so important because we have much more than just a job description. And also, I think for me, I think that would be such a big motivation staying in a company when the company makes me more curious about myself. And it's also generating trust and it makes me feel valuable. And then I'm performing better. And that's like then a beautiful woman situation. And Bernie, what do you think about playing games and finding out about hidden talents?
Yeah, so maybe first of all, of course, people and culture is a part of HR, but in my daily work, I do not have any or many touch points with HR because I think people and culture is also very essential to be established within every team. So I'm currently part of an Agile Coach community within our department, and we try to drive these topics forward. And I also, of course, try to drive these topics also forward in my teams as maybe call me Scrum Master when I'm operating in a team, but basically I'm an Agile coaching. And of course, I also like gamification. I maybe don't call them games. I sometimes call them experiments, or probably experiments. And it's really great to see people grow and think when they are playing. Yeah, because other parts of the brain are activated somehow, and then I have a couple of really funny games or experiments I do with them, and I really like the outcomes because it really makes them think in a different way and explore things from a different angle. I really like that, and that's basically what I sometimes do, like these sometimes full day workshops where I am in a room with a team and we take the time and we really do these experiments and then write down what we learn from it. And of course, then most of the challenges are when we go back to our work life, when we go back to our daily stress, then it's super important to stick to it. And this is also something why it's so important to have that people and culture feeling, or whatever you call it. Yeah. So these people-centric topics and teams, that it is there and that you don't forget it in every team meeting, in every daily or retro or whatever you call this format. It's very important to be aware of it on a daily basis.
What would your advice be, or what's like for you the key element, or how do you usually start when developing this environment, where you can work, where your team can work, what's essential here? Is there anything that you can share with us? I mean, what's the most important thing?
I think, maybe I take an example from last week where I had a team workshop. I think when I plan a team workshop like this, the first thing I do, I ask the team what they need. So it's basically not coming from me. So that's like a principle of coaching. I do not have the solution. I just want to help people. I don't want to help teams to find the solution on their own. And this is why my job is basically asking. And that's what I do a lot with surveys and polls or individual coffees or something like this. This is how I start.
Yeah. And then we have again the small moments, the individual coffee where we get to know the person and people open up. Talking about needs, Karola, I mean, I guess, there are so many different needs to meet in an organization like Teijin. We have different generations and different expertise and different jobs, how or what's the recipe for bringing all these different needs together? What have you experienced over the years? What is most important when it comes to bringing people together with different needs?
Yeah, actually, that is one of the biggest struggle points that we have right now, because again, we are coming from a history of serving the majority, or what we perceived as company the majority would like to have. Also in the discussion, I mean, we have works councils and unions in place in our organization, which are representing the people side and also bringing these needs to us. But independently from that, of course, as HR or even as a manager, you listen to people and you get to know what needs are. And what we are experiencing right now is that the people say, okay, these kind of regulations which present the majority, I don't feel that this is fitting my needs. So we are trying now to moving away partially. I mean, it's not a big bang, it's a step-by-step approach, that we are moving away from this one-fits-all solutions into more cafeteria-like, to mention another buzzword, regulations, where people have more flexibility to choose among different options. And to start to mention the needs here would take 2 hours, because that depends so much on where you are, what job you are doing, which culture you are living in. I mean, the society culture. And I think that would be overwhelming for this podcast. But the message what I want to bring is that we really have to listen more to the people. You can do that via surveys and pulses, but also individually, and give people more freedom to have at least a choice among 2 or 3 options.
And did you experience any major difference between Japan and Europe now? Because I think you recently moved from Japan to Europe again, right?
Yes, there are major differences. One is that the Japanese society in general is not a risk-taking society. So they would like to have security, and they are very anxious to take risk. So psychological safety is a very important topic at the moment in Japan, because people are still afraid to speak up. And that had changed already in Europe, because here, especially in the Netherlands, where I'm now, people have no problems to speak up. At least that is my perception, because I'm German by passport. So my view on the Netherlands is also from an outside. But that is one of the major differences that I experience between Japan and Europe, that people are more confident about their own opinion, about themselves, and they are also more demanding. I mean, the demands are not different, because also Japanese people have demands, but they are more afraid to tell them.
Yeah. Jay, what do you think? I mean, do you think that there are major differences when it comes to culture? This is important, Would you agree? Because I feel like Germans are not big risk takers, for example. I feel like we're also very security is important to us, for example. But maybe you have to see it in comparison to Japan.
So, in general, especially the so-called DACH region, so the German-speaking countries in Europe, are very problem-oriented. This comes from our language. We are very precise on the working level. We can describe everything on this level. So language is influencing as well how we are living, what are we doing. Therefore, as well, the products that are being built in Germany by Germans in these structures are quite high end. While, let's say, the French, the Italian, yada yada, they have maybe 100 expressions for love. Don't buy a French car. So this is as well something that has a direct impact on how we are working, how we are changing things. I mean, right now, the huge strikes in France, the highest density of strikes is in Belgium. So Belgium, a mixture of French and Netherlands or Dutch language. So here you see simply this kind of how important the language is. The Japanese language is again something different. We have zoom in languages and zoom out languages. Therefore, we often misunderstand the Japanese culture because they are so friendly and they let you speak and so on. It's simply a different tactic in the language. So you need to wait until you have all the informations and then you can answer. While in the Western languages, with the first sentences, you have already all the necessary informations to interrupt and to talk. So here simply to be aware of these different cultures from the language, from the society. The Japanese are as well, when you are looking into these multi-conglomerates, like Yamaha, for example, they started with music instruments before they went into through furnitures towards motorcycles. So we from our perspective, especially from the German perspective, we see them as slow, as not risk-taking. They are just more precise. They want to understand from the basic level everything what they are able to do. So here, being aware in a multinational, in a global player, is very important that the corporate structure connects all of these cultural individual nation and individual culture things. And this corporate culture has this one unique superpower to connect across all of these nationalities. So when we are setting up the right culture, when we are trying to understand, and again, transparency, appreciation, openness are core values that everyone wants to have. So as soon we give it the individual flavor and we roll out a platform to connect the people, where we are encouraging them to break out of the silos, to talk with each other. I mean, I have beautiful conversations with Japanese colleagues when we are doing workshops, when we are talking about stuff, preparations for the video podcast with the Japanese colleagues beside of the other Orga teams is always beautiful because they are curious, they want to know, they are willing to learn, and they are getting a safe space to tell their own ideas. So it is about appreciation. It is about this actively tell me your opinion.
Yeah. Benny, do you want to add something?
Yeah, there were some buzzwords popping up in my mind as well, also about psychological safety and the way we handle errors. So when someone made a mistake, that we can still feel safe, that it's okay. And I think one of the basics for this environment of trust and openness is when you really give people the time to get to know each other, and probably also on site. And I do not want to say being on site, meaning that you're sitting next to each other with the headset on and being in a Teams call, but I mean being in that one room I was telling you before, maybe playing a game or having an experiment together. So this is actually something super important for teams.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I just thought about a friend of mine who is a dancer, something completely different, but we talked about sound engineering and music before, and she just did a choreography with a French director. And the ensemble was like, I think 20 people, and they had like a couple of rehearsal days and then the production days. But he wanted them to spend 2 weeks because he said, it's so important that you spend these 2 weeks before we go into rehearsal and all these things, because I want you to build relationships, because you're going to see this on stage. And I think you can translate that easily to like companies, startups, like if, we know each other, we can trust each other, we know about our weaknesses, but there's also humor and there's much more, I think, freedom to explore each other as well and to support. Karola, when it comes to the future, because it's like the future of work, what are you hoping for, or what do you wish for when it comes to HR, people and culture? Where are we going, and what are you hoping for?
Yeah, so what I see is that work is becoming more fluid, as was mentioned also before. So we don't have this old-fashioned, lifelong job ambition anymore. But meaning fluid means also that we have also the tools in place that cater for this fluid work environment, so that we appreciate people coming and going. And what I'm hoping for is that we move away from this cookie cutter work description thing that we still have. And by the way, that is the newest, hottest thing in Japan, to move to job descriptions, because they never had it. But I want to move away from it, because they never had fit. So most of the time, 20% of the things that you do are not presented in this job descriptions, and move much more to capabilities and skills, because that gives you also more flexibility to assign people to projects that are not part of the label that they currently have. And what I also hope for is that we appreciate more inclusion and also different lifestyles, because we still have, at least in Teijin, a pretty much male-dominant culture that appreciates sitting in an office and, everyone is there, and has still difficulties to understand that there are life events, and this is independent from gender, I would say, that might not fit into that culture. And I hope that we have more openness for different lifestyles and can incorporate them also in our HR system, let's say.
Benny, when you think about 2050, so future far, far away, but like, what comes to your mind, or what are you hoping for? Where are we heading? What's important for you when you think about people?
Yeah, the first thing that pops into my mind, and I think Karola was also triggering that when talking about the needs of future generations. I see, of course, the work or the job life a lot more international and a lot more globalized. So I read a story on LinkedIn that there was someone applying for a really cool job, and it was a really cool guy, and he declined because it was not possible to work remotely for half a year in some other countries around the globe. And of course, my hope is that we get more flexible in this, so that we have more flexibility in regards to remote work, wherever that might be. And I know there are a ton of rules and regulation in place, not only from the corporates, but also from the European Union, for example, and everything. And I know that it's complicated, and I know that these are a lot of new topics that also popped up because of the pandemic. But thinking about, what did you say, 2050?
Yeah. That's like
that's hard to imagine. But yeah, my hope is that this won't be a problem anymore, and that we're all kind of connected no matter where we are. Yeah, that's that's it.
Yeah.
And of course, that people and culture and all these topics that are linked to it will grow in importance as well, because as everything is getting more fluid and more complex, we have to have this human-centric approach. to build relationships and to appreciate what's actually human, because we are not machines, and we have to create this, a sustainable environment more and more, because sometimes work environments getting sometimes less sustainable because of these trends, and because we have to work longer. And that's also a second topic I would like to address.
Yeah.
People.
Jay, what is your vision when it comes to 2050?
So I don't call myself an optimist, I'm a positivist. I am actively shaping this kind of future. For one of my clients, I have developed a concept of how the future of employees should look like, where we've been describing a hybrid model between getting your basic income for a basic work, and then the rest of the time you can simply decide, is it enough money for me? Can I do something different, work for an NGO, for an NPO, whatever? Or you could hire as a freelancer within your own company or another company. So more flexibility in your individual approach, sharing these experiences, not understanding each other as competition anymore, but really this collaboration, cooperation. So with, again, all of these new tools, and I have, for example, some colleagues in the whole coaching, psychology, and so on things that are heavily using ChatGPT, for example, to organize their workshops, to set up the agenda. And when you start to understand how to use this, you are getting a very powerful tool. And I want to quote here Henry Ford. Henry Ford said, you can have this car in any color you want, as long as it's black. This describes quite well this automation, this industrialization process, this one size fits all, because this was more or less the only way how to go into mass production. Now, with all of these new tools, with artificial intelligence, with prediction models, and so on, we are even able to do mass production, and these huge corporates with 120, 200,000, 300,000 employees, and handling everything in an individual way. This is the superpower, and I strongly believe, and I work on this, to enable more companies, more entities with this smartification of their work processes, with their businesses, to do stuff, scalable stuff, but always on an individual level. So this is my take for 2050.
Yeah, that sounds really, really cool. I want to live in that future, and it sounds like, I think there are great things ahead, and I'm really curious to be part of this journey. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us on the Future Navigation platform. Thank you so much, Karola, for your time. Bernie, it was wonderful. Bernie, maybe you can also say something. Where can we watch your film about values on the sailing boat? I really want to. It's on YouTube, right? We can also put the link in the description. You should check it out. When I saw it first, I got like goosebumps. It's really empowering, and I think, create your own story. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful day, evening, morning, wherever you are, and see you soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.